intentional.
I can say their videos.
Oh, I can.
Or no, I
can
mean
see
Jennifer and Juliana.
Oh, I see.
mine's
I
not
see
on.
Juliana. I see Juliana.
Interesting. Can you see anyone besides me, Ed and Kat?
I can see all of you, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know what's going on with mine. I guess I don't need to see them to make this go forward. So we'll take turns asking questions, and I'll start. We'll start with Kat on this one. And just introduce yourself and say why you're running.
Well, as you know, I'm Kat Zwicker. I'm running for mayor because I feel like this is the time to add some new innovative transparency processes to council. I feel like it's a time to bring some new energy. We've had a lot of very good work with this council in this last year, and I know that Ed has done a great job. I am really looking to include those processes moving forward, but add more public outreach, more ability to hear all voices and all aspects, and then work on those projects that, again, all mayors have passions for, which for me would be the addition of housing for all incomes and all types in Redmond, as well as our infrastructure improvements and processes. I just feel like it's a good time to focus there.
Thanks so much. So Ed, same question. Introduce yourself, say why you're running.
So Ed Fitch, mayor, and I just think that we're in the middle of a lot of critical projects and policies that need to get completed. I think the experience I've had and the background I've had in city government for a long time will help getting those over the finish line. And examples are water policy with the Water Resources Department, transportation issues with the Transportation Commission and Department, and some of the homeless issues that we're looking at. I know Kat and I are both working on getting a managed camp in place by next summer. So there's a myriad of projects and policies that I think need to get attended to in the same vein we have over the next 2 years. As Kat's indicated, we've been very successful since last January in getting a lot done here in Redmond. I think it's been a positive move forward. We have a great council. I think the dynamics there are very good. But I do think that we should continue that. In terms of transparency, I meet with people almost every day in terms of public outreach. People call me, people email me, people come in to see me. So there's a lot of public input that I have done individually. We also have a very open process at council. If someone wants to have something on the agenda, it goes on the agenda. It's not like before where we had a very closed system. So I think we're on the right track, and I think we should continue it.
Great, thanks. So we're going to take turns asking questions. I think it's Juliana's turn next.
Okay, great. So we'll start with Ed this time. What do you think is the biggest issue facing Redmond right now?
Well, the challenges that growth present, and they're all across the board, whether it's water, which we're working through with the Water Resources Department, transportation, we need a lot of infrastructure improvements, and funding is always a challenge. The Oregon Department of Transportation has indicated they don't even have money to maintain their roads, much less make investment in needed improvements. We're the second fastest growing city in the state. The population center of Central Oregon, interestingly enough, is actually moving north from Bend. I met with Steve Gordon, the president of the St. Charles, and he agrees that when you look at the population forecast going into the future, between Prineville, Madras, and Redmond, the population center of Central Oregon is moving north. We also have 1,500 acres of industrial and business sector property. We are going to be the manufacturing center of Central Oregon. All that puts a lot of stress on our growth in terms of transportation infrastructure, affordable housing, traffic safety, because people are trying to find different ways to get somewhere quicker. It's amazing to me how many people you see go through red lights now. But that growth is really the primary focus for the council and for the whole community.
Got it. Thank you. Kat, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I think I have it. What is our biggest priority? And the mayor has hit on all of the topics that the council is currently doing. And I think it's just a series of nuances at this point, because transportation and our infrastructure, just due to the rapid growth in Redmond, is our priority. But along with that comes, how do we pay for it? And that's going to be the struggles that we're having in that communication and transparency with the public, because growth doesn't happen for free. And as the mayor has indicated, we are out of funding from ODOT. They've said quite clearly on the news and through the Joint Transportation Committee that they are only doing repairs for the next 5 years. So we are going to have to work diligently with our legislator to get funding for some of those projects outside of those in our CIP. And those would be the ones that would be for safety on Northwest 35th and Highland, the future roundabout at Hemholt, all to help balance the East Side Arterial, which is in our capital improvement project and is funded, and with our balance to the west side. So we can create that robust transportation around the city, not through the city, and take away some of those speeders. And that is something I think the council is working on diligently to have happen. Also water conservation, and kudos to Ed on this. He has really worked one-on-one with Oregon Water Resources Department and GIS to really get a rate and volume structure that might help us through the next 2 decades. And that was something that was an unintended goal of this council, and that we had to work on for policy. Housing, again, is my hot ticket. I really feel like what we need to do there is look at more public-private partnerships, but across all income streams. We've broken ground with Rooted on 19th. We have Rooted on Antler, Cinder Hollow, and even at North Point coming up. And that'll add some affordable and workforce housing, but we need to balance that with those market rate pieces and create those communities that are all levels, all incomes, that expand on those external arterial ways, so that we're creating communities with complete infrastructure that doesn't have to come into the downtown core unless you want to come down for a festival and a walkabout, but you can go home and enjoy time with your family. And then for me, it's just starting to creep into our bandwidth, but redundant systems. We talk about Core 3 a lot, and that's going to be for the Central Oregon Cascadia event. It'll be a center that we're building with the county to take care of emergencies when they happen. But let's look at the emergencies that happen here in the city. We have lost power at the airport. We have lost power at our smoke jumper and air supply base. And when we have to shut those things down, we don't have a redundant system. So I think one of the things we need to add to our city goals, redundancy in those systems that can help us survive our own mini natural disasters or fires, so that we can keep the city running smoothly, keep our transportation corridors, and our safety with our wildland firefighters. So I think that's another priority in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so
And I think-
much. We'll go to a question from Jennifer.
Okay. Hi. So Kat, we're going to start with you for this one. And you already touched on it a little bit, but it's affordable housing. So affordable housing has increasingly become a challenge in Redmond. As mayor, what policies would you support to ensure that affordable housing options continue to increase for all income levels?
Some of this will happen at the policy and the legislative level. The governor's office has been working to create some more robust policies to create housing and ownership options across the board. We really shouldn't just look at density and rental units, because that doesn't allow people to build the generational wealth that they need to cycle through the housing cycle. You start your first home, you build into your family home, maybe your second home, and then you retire and you kind of go backwards. Housing is a complete circle. So I would look at things such as finding ways to shorten the condominium. There's like a warranty law, so builders will build you a condominium, but in 10 years, if things were to fail, they could go back against the builder, not the HOA, for corrections, which could have just been lack of maintenance. So you'll see that we don't have condominiums that are affordable, because builders find this to be an onerous way to get kind of dinged in the backside when people just haven't maintained their infrastructure. So more of those systems to help. I think we are raising our SDCs, but we're also going to have to look at how system development charges impact individual units, because right now it's the same SDC for a 2,500 square foot home and an 800 square foot home. And so that causes housing disparity in cost. So these are things we'll have to look at. Is there a way to leverage some sort of credit or density bonus to downplay those system development charges on what would be workforce and affordable housing?
Okay, great, thank you. And Ed, would you like me to repeat the question?
No. The ironic thing in our discussion today, as you probably have seen already, is that we're basically on the same page on just about everything. The affordable housing is a priority for the council. And we were successful, more successful than most other cities in getting funding for our North Point project. Over the past few years, I think we've gotten $8.5 million for infrastructure. That's a 40-acre parcel that half of it will be for affordable and workforce housing. It's a challenge for affordable housing. There's no question about it. The best solution we've seen is some form of public-private partnership where the public can provide the land, a private developer or nonprofit can develop it with certain restrictions to keep it affordable over time. But it's tough. It is very, very challenging. It's also subject to all these market forces, as you've seen with the interest rates, just the effect they've had on the affordability of housing for people. If interest rates come back down to 3 or 4%, that'll open up a whole group of people who can now afford a home that couldn't before. So it's a complex and challenging project, but the whole city council and city administration is committed to doing everything we possibly can to help provide more affordable housing to the best of our ability with the limited resources we have.
Can I jump in for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the mayor's correct. North Point has been a pilot project that the city's been working on since Jack Zika. And the problem with the pilot project is it's just that, it's a pilot project. So kudos to the city and the staff and this particular council for working through a lot of the harder pieces, the annexation of the ground, getting the contractor oversight and getting the master plan done. The negative that has come up over this, and it's a moving target and a moving number, and I'm on this committee, is that only 1/3 of the current housing units will be workforce and affordable housing, because what we've discovered as we go through this pilot project and the funding and the infrastructure, it becomes not affordable for our partners to come in with that type of lift to cover that big of a space, and it impacts the grants they can go out for to work with us. So what we did in this particular instance is phase the project in hopes that when we get through the first couple phases and filter in some of that market rate, we may be able to sweep back and add more affordable units. But at this point, it went from like over 480 units, we're down to 380 due to topography, infrastructure, and management of the land. And that about 1/3 of those will be the affordable and workforce. But it is that private-public partnership that is making this a tremendously great project. And then of course there will be some rental units. Hopefully we'll partner with Housing Works to have those there as well.
I just wanted to ask a quick follow-up because we have heard some comments from some other folks during this election season about the project, about North Point just taking so long and having that be, something of a criticism on the city and maybe even the legislative or just the state, some of the mandates. Do either of you have any, comments about that, or, is that,
Yes,
that's fair?
Go ahead, Ed.
Go
I'll let you.
Go ahead, Cap.
I was going to say, it's like giving me a ticket to Paris, but not any money to spend while I'm there. That's kind of how this pilot project came about. It's like, we're going to give you this ability to do this because you have this parcel of land, which we didn't have. It was county land, and the annexation for the county land was finally approved sometime, I want to say late in 2023, at which point we immediately went out and got a master developer and did a planned unit development, and it's been rolling pretty quickly, because if you see an annexation in regular time, those usually are like 5-6 years from the time we approve an annexation to the master plan to the first shovel in the ground. So we're not tracking out of schedule for having something that wasn't even in the UGB, that has absolutely no infrastructure over there for water and sewer and power. These are all things we have to fund and supply that are not included in that gift of opportunity to create this product.
Yeah, did you want to add anything?
From the city's perspective, and Keith Bukowski, our city manager, will certainly confirm this, is that it was nice to get to 40 acres, but it wasn't anywhere close to infrastructure. And to actually get the infrastructure in there, and we're talking $20-30 million worth of infrastructure just before you can actually go vertical with a home. has been quite challenging, and we're getting there. I mean, we've assembled enough money to get the first phase going. Everybody's been, rowing in the same direction, but getting a piece of land without any infrastructure on it or any infrastructure close to it presented a significant challenge to the city.
So it sounds like you both agree that the city's done everything it can to get that project going as quickly as possible.
Yes, I
I
think,
believe so. Yes.
yeah.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next question. Still kind of on housing. And I believe we are starting with Kat this time. Yes, let's say Kat. we start losing track. Give us an example of how you've worked to reduce homelessness and address concerns related to unsanctioned camping and shelter capacity in Redmond.
So I think one of the first things that we worked with when I came on council in 2022 when I was appointed, and then in 2023, is there was a lot of discussion about helping our service partners. A lot didn't happen in 2022. This council actually has helped with funding issues and infrastructure for Shepherd's House and Oasis Village to help them create the capacity we needed to get people off the street. And then the second thing we did is we created our camping code, and very proud of our camping code because I also sit on the coordinated homeless response office, and it's come up in several conversations that our service providers and some of our partner cities are looking at our camping code as kind of a platform for them to start from. And it's allowed us to, give people dignity, but time to move, and we've worked really well with them. So I think our next step is, again, the Northeast campus, Northeast Managed Camp, and working there to create that transitional level of housing with wraparound services and support our partners in that.
Great. Ed, would you like a repeat of that question?
Did I miss something?
No, it's again, this council has gone above and beyond in trying to address homelessness in a comprehensive way because it's two sides of the same coin. One is the livability of the community, where you see conflicts of people living on the street, whether it's in residential areas, downtown, and also helping those who are in need get into a place that's a safe location where they can at least have that comfort of being in a place where they don't have to worry about their stuff being stolen, with conflicts with neighbors, etc. So to do that, as Kat indicated, we did the camping code. We don't have those conflicts in our residential areas and downtown like what occurred before. But we also work diligently in getting money into Shepherd's House and getting the state funding for Oasis and getting that constructed just before the deadline of last January 15th, so they could open and accept people. Right now, Kat and I are working on with the county and service providers to get a managed camp facility sited north of Oasis. This will enable us to help the people on the northeast Redmond to get into a safe location and reduce that conflict we've seen with some of the businesses out there. It'll also enable the county to relocate people off their, I think it's about 130-acre parcel in northeast Redmond, and exchange that with the Department of State Lands for property south of the fairgrounds. So I think in some respects, Redmond's been seen as a model of how to deal with homelessness for other communities because of that interplay of the camping code, protecting the integrity of our neighborhoods and downtown, but also on the other hand, doing what we need to do and putting the time and effort in to get these safe locations for those homeless to get into and get on that ladder to more stable housing.
Great, thanks so much. Juliana, your question.
Okay, great. And this will be the last one having to do with housing. Redmond is obviously, like you said, one of the fastest growing cities in the state, and growth is a reality. Knowing you're mandated by the state to increase housing supply, how do you talk to people in the city who are opposed to growth and want to retain the small town Redmond they've known over the years? And Ed, we'll start with you on this one.
It's challenging. The key to that in my opinion, is protecting existing neighborhoods. We get a lot of pressure from the state to infill, to put in more and more housing, even into existing neighborhoods. And that's the toughest part, because people buy a home within a neighborhood that's the reason they bought it. They like that neighborhood, and changing it has a certain implication. Most of our growth is happening on the perimeter, either Southwest Redmond or Northwest Redmond. And one of the keys to balancing I'll call it the historical integrity of Redmond and that small town feel, and accommodating all this growth, is through transportation in particular. And that is making sure people have a much easier access instead of going through existing neighborhoods. So if you compare like Bend and Redmond, what we're looking at as a council long-range future is to do a beltway here. And that would be Helmholtz on the west and 9th Street and Airport Way on the east, connecting those at O'Neill Junction on the north, and a new southern interchange on the south, which would connect Southeast 19th Street, Juniper Golf Course, with Helmholtz and Canal on the west side. That'll give people a lot of ability to get from the east to the west without going through the middle of town like you have to in Bend. We're also looking at, we'll start construction on the East Side Arterial, which will provide an alternate access to Highway 97. So as long as you can, to the best of your ability, fashion transportation systems that don't mean everyone has to go through existing neighborhoods to get from here to there, I think that will help a lot, because when people feel their neighborhood has that same feel to it, and they can access downtown easily, or they can get to the east to the west very easily without going through existing neighborhoods, you can balance that intense growth with that small town feel of Old Redmond. I think that's the best we can do.
Got it. Thank you. Kat.
So I'm going to agree with the mayor's transportation. We all believe that creating a robust transportation system that directs traffic that doesn't need to go through the city is one of the most important things to do. But one of the ways to maintain that integrity of community while growing is to create those micro communities. And one of the things that I've been pushing for and will continue to push for in our annexations and master planning and growth is to create live work scenarios within those neighborhoods where we can have small coffee shops and barrios and childcare centers and places where people will gather when they get home, so that they don't have to lose that connectivity among their neighborhood and their neighbors, but can always then, come to the downtown for the events and the festivals and the things that we all enjoy. Somewhat different than, keeping the downtown core, it's the only place to go, but allowing opportunities and places for other people to gather that creates that sense of community, because it's the sense of community that people love in Redmond. So having those micro communities that can then go to the whole, I think, is extremely important, and I'll continue to advocate for that.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for that for both of you. I'd love to ask just a quick follow-up on that. Maybe we'll just start with Ed again. How do you see a beltway being funded? Just thinking about, it's been tough historically in Redmond to get bonds passed. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'd say probably 60% of that beltway is already in place. Once the East Side Arterial is completed, and most already exists. The connectivity on the north and south ends are going to be challenging. We believe that on the new southern interchange, which might happen in the next 5 to 10 years, that's critical for the state of Oregon to develop their lands that's controlled by the Department of State Lands south of Juniper Golf Course. That's 750 acres of large lot industrial. They need to develop and sell it for the benefit of the Common School Fund. We have an increasingly active fairgrounds. We're looking at a regional sports center south of the fairgrounds. All that will need an outflow south of Redmond, connecting Bend and Redmond. I think we can probably, over time, put together about a $30 million package between the state lands, the city, and the Deschutes County. And that is kind of the same process that Bend used in terms of getting the Cooley Road improvements done, of having that package and then leveraging it with the federal government to fund the balance. So there are challenges, but I think there's also solutions out there. But most of that beltway is already in place.
Did you want to add anything to that, Kat? Just
Well,
about
obviously, that is
this
the best
transportation.
way on the funding. Right now, for some of those smaller pieces and the more immediate future of our little cogs to the wheel is how I look at them, because all of these pieces, like Ed has said, are in place and are growing. What we're finding is we annex out and some of our arterial roads are becoming our county roads. We're looking at ways to annex those in, get the right of way, or work with the county to improve them as we go. We can use Helmholtz as an example. That will become a west side arterial piece, and that will look amazing, you know, if we can get into that in the next 5 to 10 years. But it will allow us to do that roundabout to get things done. And again, we're already lobbying our legislature to help us with some of our funding. So the roundabouts, the four-way stop signal at 35th and Highland, all of that is critical. So again, I think we'll be spending a lot of time in Salem talking to people to get on their Christmas tree lists and other places to offset some of these small costs and build the blocks. And I think it's a block at a time, and then go into a bigger bond process once you have those little building blocks in place.
Thanks for that. I think we're on Jennifer for a question. You still there, Jennifer? I don't know what happened. All right, I can ask the next question. We'll start with Kat. Groundwater is a growing concern in the region. You both mentioned it already. Tell us how you've worked on this issue.
Both the mayor and I are on the Central Oregon Cities Organization, and currently he is the chair. And this is something that came to our attention a couple of years ago when we were applying for one of our wells, that it was not going to be readily accepted by the Oregon Water Resource Department. And it kind of made us go back to our water committee, and we worked with different water engineers to look at the basin, to look at different structures. And I will honestly say the technology of this is intimidating, but we have been able to create pathways through our work across Central Oregon cities and through the work of the mayor and GIS to at least negotiate a rate versus volume program that will allow us the room for the next couple decades to expand our conservation efforts within the city. And we all know we want to keep this as a great place for our families to be, our kids to be. So conservation is a necessary part. We're also working to create, I will call them test gardens. We're taking out some of our green belts and we're putting in different levels of natural plantings, xeriscaping, pollinators at different levels of water usage to kind of show people what we can do and how it would look to promote conservation. And then again, we'll look at probably utility rate increases for like high water use down the road. So we'll have to look and adjust for people that want 1 acre of rolling green lawn and they're using all the city's water at the peak summer. What does that look like? And even our schools have cut back. Our biggest water users are our schools, and they've cut back and have really joined in this. So I think those conservation efforts are huge.
Thanks for that. Would you like a repeat, Ed?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
So a couple of years ago, as Kat indicated, we applied for an additional groundwater permit. And in July of 2023, Water Resources told the city staff in no uncertain terms that they would deny the application. So we got engaged from the elected council's position. I found that Water Resources had not been complying with the law, that there is a law that requires them to coordinate these types of applications with the Department of Land Conservation Development. There's also a 1990 agreement, interagency agreement between Water Resources and the Department of Land Conservation Development on how to process this if Water Resources is even looking to deny an application for a municipality. The reason for that is that there's a very close coordination or connection between land use requirements that cities have. We have to have a plan to provide 20 years of water for our future citizens. That's mandated by law. Water Resources ignored that complete part of the state program. So when we brought that to their attention and to the Office of the Governor's attention, a lot more dynamic occurred in which Water Resources, I think, came up with a solution that, as Kat indicated, will give us sufficient water for the next 20 years. Basically what it is we're going to be able to use the water we don't use in the wintertime and add that to the summertime without increasing the volume, but giving us more flexibility to meet the needs, because obviously our use of water in the summer is much more intensive than in the wintertime. Beyond that, there is a significant issue of groundwater in Central Oregon in terms of the policy for the next century. For example, we have 20,000 exempt wells in Central Oregon. Those exempt wells, each of them can use 15,000 gallons of water a day. Compare that to a city where our per capita rate is 172 gallons per day. So there's a big disparity. In fact, these 20,000 exempt users are authorized by law to use 90 billion gallons of water, whereas all the cities in Central Oregon combined use less than 9 billion gallons a year. So there are significant policy issues that need to be addressed. We're dealing with water law and water policy from over 100 years ago that really doesn't fit anymore. 90% of the people in Central Oregon live inside a city. 80% of all our activity in Central Oregon is inside a city. Yet the cities are the only ones being put through the ringer by Water Resources Department. So it really doesn't make any sense. And I think they finally come to recognize that. And there may be a movement in the coming years to maybe prioritize municipal use of water as opposed to the past where we were just put in a different system. So there's a lot there, but I think we're making a lot of progress.
Do you see mayors being, as a mayor, is this something, just the dynamic that you just described about wells? Is that the mayor's job to advocate for that? What is the mayor's role in just really trying to change that?
Not changing that. It's really just bringing it to the attention that if we're going to look at groundwater as a system and who's going to use it, who's going to have priority of using it, how are we going to use it? From our perspective, and this is just not the mayors or the city councils, it's the entire League of Oregon Cities as well, that all those, any appropriator of water in Oregon needs to be regulated. We have over 700,000 appropriators of water in Oregon that are unregulated. And the ones who are regulated, like the irrigation districts and the cities, they're the ones who are being put through the ringer more than anyone else. So all I'm saying is to get a level playing field and to have a grasp of what's going on with all of our state water, we need to come up with a different paradigm, a different system that's going to make much more sense going forward.
Yeah. Kat, did you want to add anything to that?
I am. Again, Ed's perfectly right on this. One of the easiest ways to look at this for all people is if you imagine our basin and all users have a straw in the basin. And so all those people who have a straw in the basin who are taking water out, they all kind of need to have representation and be at the table, but we're all responsible for the use because one person's use impacts another person's use. And I think that cities are trying to say we're not the biggest impactor. We actually are one of the smaller impactors, but we're being punished the most so that these other people can keep their straws in the water and do as they please. And it's having the conversations at the level we've had at the city. We've invited all the stakeholders. We've had Oregon Water Resources at the table, and we've had facilitated conversations with the League of Oregon Cities. The mayor's been to facilitated conversations with the governor's staff. I think those are important things, but it's keeping everybody in process and getting that total understanding of this is, a limited natural resource, and we need to be cognizant of how it is used. And those are the good conversations that we're having going forward.
Yeah. We're going to go to Juliana for the next question. I should be able to keep track of who started first, but I seem to, that's like a deficit of mine, I guess.
It doesn't matter.
I don't think we're picky. Yeah, we'll do it.
Okay, I can't remember either, so we'll just randomize. Let's see. Okay, so Kat, we'll start with you for this one. Do you support the ballot measures allowing for cannabis sales and psilocybin centers within city limits? And why or why not?
So I'm extremely cautious on all of these, and I pretty much believe that as far as the cannabis industry goes, it will federally be declassified, and we're going to have cannabis centers in Redmond, whether we were to oppose them or not. We put out an advisory vote simply because we'd like to know what the city thinks. And if that advisory vote leads us to, yes, we would like them yesterday, we will work to create time, place, and manner rulings to keep the number of cannabis centers pretty much as balanced as our liquor stores, because I don't feel that they need to be everywhere. As for psilocybin, I just dislike the way the entire law was written. I don't think there's a problem in the world with what psilocybins do for people. I have a problem with the fact that the way that measure came out, it's created psychedelic tourism in Oregon. There's not the ability for our veterans or our lower income people suffering through PTSD, manic depression, bipolar disorder, any of those things to easily procure this item. And when you look at they're asking to open up centers in places like Pronghorn, and entry level is $1,800 to $3,000, and they don't have a really great level of follow-up care other than how are you feeling after 72 hours. I think that there's a long way to go with making this better. And I don't want it to be Oregon as the experimental state, yet the not a benefit to the people who really need it.
Got it. Thank you. Ed?
Oh, I do support the marijuana initiative. We've had this issue being discussed at the council level probably for the last 2 or 3 years. And obviously there's people who are passionately for it, particularly people who need it for medical purposes. There's people passionately against it, thinking it's going to be open to floodgates for drugs in Redmond. I think I take a more balanced approach in that if we, as Kat indicated, treat it almost like liquor stores and not have it downtown, not have it on Highland, not have it near residential areas, that it'll provide access for those people who use it. We already know that people in Redmond are going to Bend and buying it there and paying the tax to Bend. Having these people drive back and forth on Highway 97, and particularly people who need it for medical purposes, doesn't make sense to me. So I do support it, but it's whatever the people vote on. If they vote it down, then that's the end of that discussion. If they vote for it, then I agree with Kat that we will have fairly restrictive time, place, and manner. I think one on the north, one on the south, something along those lines, like our liquor stores, would be appropriate.
Okay, great. And then I just have another quick question, just sort of about city council public comment public comment periods, and how that sort of relates to equity and inclusion. So I know Redmond, I reported on this, has seen some issues involving inappropriate remarks during city council public comment periods. So as Redmond continues to grow, do you see the city establishing some form of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs? And Kat, we'll start with you for that one.
So as far as the public comment and establishing a program with that, I think we're treading very cautiously on freedom of speech. And that is the problem that we have tried to, and we constantly talk about at the council level, is the things that are being said, while they are often egregious to some and all or others, they are not defined as hate speech or anything that we can actually act upon. We've talked to the city attorney about this. So what we have tried to do is create a platform in which those public comments can still be heard, but they're limited to a time base, and we move on. And what I have seen, and I'm very proud of our community, is that we have people for the negative comment will come back and rebut it with something positive and put it back in the light and the place it should be. So I think sometimes the hardest thing to do is embrace and tolerate that very divisive discussion, but it is bringing out the best in others in our community and showing that support. So that ongoing balance, I think, is where we're finally getting after 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Ed, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, after being a lawyer for 40 years, I've got pretty thick skin, so the comment don't actually bother me as much. But no, there's a few people who just, it's beyond the pale sometimes what they say, but it is free speech, and so be it. Generally, I think 90% of the people in our community are not interested in some of these wacko statements that are made at council. They really want to know, how are we doing? What are we doing to better the community? What are we doing to address their concerns in terms of traffic safety, et cetera? So I don't put much stock in the whole thing about public comment. And I think our prioritizing city business in our council meetings and getting the work done, I think that was the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you.
We're getting close to the end of the questions. Just a couple more for you. We're going to start with Ed about this. Ed, what do you love about Redmond? Why is it special to you?
Well, I came here in 1979 as the city attorney for Redmond and assistant city attorney in Bend. So I was really splitting my time 50-50 between both communities. And there's something about Redmond that I've loved since I came here. And I'm glad I chose Redmond instead of Bend 45 years ago. We've raised our family here. It is a tight-knit community. The neighborhoods are fantastic. And the way I compare Bend and Redmond, for example, Bend seems to be so much more about money, and Redmond seems to be so much more about heart. We don't have a very wealthy community, but we have the volunteerism in Redmond is beyond belief. I mean, it's off the charts. Last night I went to a volunteer appreciation dinner for Jericho Road, and thousands of hours that people put in helping others here in our community. And that's not Jericho Road, but you look everywhere in our community, whether it's schools, whether it's our parks. There is such a strong sense of heart here, a strong sense of we really want our community to succeed. That I've always cherished, and that's why I live here and I love it.
Awesome, thanks. Kat, why is Redmond special to you?
So I
Why
don't
do you
have
like it?
its footprint. I moved here in 2000, have been here since. I did choose between Bend and Redmond. Redmond was a much more welcoming city. From the time I started looking at where I wanted to live, very inquisitive, very helpful. Everybody wanted to just have conversations about who you were and where you were from. My family is lifelong Oregonians. I got bounced around as a military brat. So it was fun for me to actually establish roots, and I chose here, raised a stepdaughter here. I think Ed is not off the mark. I volunteer so much in this community because you cannot not volunteer in this community. You just love it so much, and there's so many opportunities to do different things, whether you want to be in a smart reading program and be at the schools and help with reading, or you want to just do donations and drives. I do a lot with Neighbor Impact. I really find this to be a community that has a servant's heart. And people really, even when we're looking at working with the unhoused, we're looking at how to do it compassionately and with dignity. And what does that look like? And when we're working with people that have food insecurity, they're not the people you assume. They're, retirees and single parents. And, it's so good to see the outreach and love in this community. So I think that's really why I love here. And of course, then we all know the benefit of Redmond doesn't get as much snow as Bend. So I like the fact that I can get around and do more in the winter without the snow tires.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah,
Shoot.
not as much.
Just one more question. I think we'll let Jennifer ask it. Last one on the list.
Okay, she's muted.
Okay.
There.
Hi, I'm here. Okay, so the last question is, as we've been talking, you guys are definitely in agreement on a lot of things. So this is an opportunity to talk about what sets you apart from your opponent, how you're different. And
She's a woman and I'm a man. That's one. She's got more hair than
I'm tall,
I do.
Ed is short.
But yeah, I guess is Ed starting?
Sure. I
Okay.
know, I think Kat and I voted the same on everything except for two instances, and they were very minor. Um, I'll call it even non-substantive in some respects. We both care for Redmond a lot. But I do believe that with the experience and leadership skills I've had or have and have shown in the past, that I think over the coming years, that'll do Redmond well in terms of getting a lot of the projects and policies we've been talking about near to completion or completed. I firmly believe that that is really the margin of difference between us.
So for me, it does come down to, I think my perspective is a little bit different in how I engage with people and how I do things. But ultimately, Ed's right. We have very little division on the things that make a city, because infrastructure really doesn't have a political opinion. It's how we grow. I will say that the projects that we've talked about today won't be done in 2 years. They're going to maybe be a couple finished, but shovel ready in 4 to 6 and completed in 10 to 15. So it's the ongoing process that I feel it's the time now for me to dip that toe in the water and get started on, because I do want that track record and ability to take these things to the end. I think that's really important to me. And again, then just having a little bit different hand on things. I don't believe that I'm not inexperienced. I'll be 60 years old this year. I've run a business since 2008. I've been executive level for the Central Oregon Association of Realtors. I sit on a couple different boards, so I would like to think that that is a level of competency and experience that I could bring forward in people management and mediation, which is a lot of what we do with council. And then as far as the knowledge, yes, I am not an attorney, but I am well read and I do the homework. So I think I can add to that as well.
Well, thanks to you both for a great discussion. You're already both serving as public servants, and we just, always want to thank people for your service to our communities. It's just so important to have, smart and committed people working on behalf of all of us. So thank you so much for the time today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Have a great one, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. All righty.
Sorry about my technical difficulties.
Are you still recording?